If there is one hill I will die on, it's supporting American ranchers. President Trump, please reconsider your plan to sell out our American ranchers for Argentine imports. The American cattleman has already been pushed to the edge of the cliff. Don't stab them in the back. Representative Thomas Massie is here to weigh in. The show starts now.
But my question is, what do you have to say to U.S. farmers who feel that the deal is benefiting Argentina more than it is them, they are
Argentina's fighting for its life, young lady. You don't know anything about it. They're fighting for their life. Nothing's benefiting Argentina. They're fighting for their life. You understand what that means? They have no money. They have no anything. They're fighting so hard to survive. If I can help them survive in a free world, I happen to like the president of Argentina. I think he's trying to do the best he can, but don't make it sound like they're doing great. They are dying. All right? They're dying.
That may be true, but President Trump, I say this with the utmost respect. What the hell are you doing? Cutting a deal to help Argentina and their ranchers by flooding our market with their beef is not America first. In fact, it's so far from America first, it makes my stomach turn. This is a kick to the balls and a knife in the back of our American ranchers, and there's no other way to put it. Are beef prices high? Yeah. Are American ranchers seeing all the benefit of that? No. They're barely staying operational as is. The answer to lowering beef prices is not to flood the market with cheap from Argentina. I don't care how much you like their president. Our American ranchers are already being severely undercut by the greedy meat packers who import cheap foreign beef. Also, because most of our lawmakers are impotent, they refuse to pass country of origin labeling, so our American ranchers are unable to differentiate their superior product from these cheap foreign imports. And you want to make it worse? Flooding the market with Argentine beef is not America first. What this is a giant gift to the greedy meat packers who already screw over our American ranchers by importing foreign beef and passing it off as product of USA. Again, due to the fact we do not have country of origin labeling laws. This move is no different than importing cheap from China and undercutting American producers and workers. It's an abomination. Under the same logic, we should scrap all the tariffs, import the cheapest from everywhere else on planet Earth, and then hire illegal aliens who will work for less. Sound good? I don't think so. So why do it to the American rancher? American ranchers always get screwed over. They don't have big money lobbyists fighting for them. They don't get the subsidies. They don't get the bailouts. The meat packers, on the other hand, well, they have some of the most powerful lobbyists in the entire world. The American ranchers who just want to work hard, put out a great product to feed Americans are always the ones to take it on the chin. This model of importing meat from other countries isn't new, by the way. We've been flooding the market with cheap foreign beef for a decade. You know what that does to our American ranchers? It kills them. So now we hear about this herd shortage. Well, no Sherlock. This jacked up system has all but run our ranchers out of business by importing cheap foreign meat and undercutting the American rancher to the point of barely being able to break even. And now the ones that are still hanging on by a thread are going to be completely decimated with this latest endeavor to import even more foreign meat. This is an absolute disgrace, a stab in the back, a complete betrayal of the American cattleman. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Joining me now is one of the few that's fighting for the American rancher, Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie. He is one of the few in Washington actually standing up for farmers, for ranchers, for America's food freedom. He joins me now. Congressman, thank you so much for taking the time.
Tommy, I've done 3 or 4 interviews on this topic in the last couple of days, and yours is the strongest monologue I have heard. You are not pulling any punches here. I will add some things to it, but it's going to be hard to add to it. You hit the nail on the head. This is a slap in the face to ranchers and farmers. Look, they've been suffering. We're in a cyclical market, and they're finally seeing almost fair prices for the cattle. Now, there have been high prices in the supermarket, but like you said, that's not to blame on the cattlemen. Those are the greedy, as you say. They're basically an oligarch of meat I call them the meat industrial complex. There's 4 meat packers that control 85% of the meat that's processed in the United States. One is owned by Brazil and one is owned by China. You know, we talk about we shouldn't be letting the Chinese buy our farmland. Do people know the Chinese have already bought one of the biggest meat packers and own it outright in the United States, and that Brazil owns one of the other ones? And that's the case that we face now. The other slap in the face here, Tommy, is country of origin labeling. And that was removed in 2015 because the World Trade Organization, although I have my own theory on what really happened, the World Trade Organization told Congress that you have to repeal your country of origin labels on beef and pork. You know how ridiculous that is? The suit that I wear has a country of origin labeling. The boots I wear, the car I drive, the phone I use, even chicken and seafood and produce has country of origin labeling. But the meat packers are so powerful, they got stripped from beef and pork in the United States in 2015. So it's like you said, if you're a consumer and you go to the supermarket and you want to put America first, let's say you want to vote with your wallet, you can't even determine what's the cheap meat that's been flooded from the other country and what's the stuff that comes from U.S. ranchers, because it all says USDA, and people think that means USA. So there's even a fraud going on here.
I'm so glad that you're bringing this up. It's something I've been fighting for over a decade. I am from South Dakota. I come from a ranching family on both sides of my family. My uncle still runs the family ranch in Mobridge, South Dakota. So this is an issue that's so important to me. I work very closely with RCAF that fights actually for the American cattlemen. There are other lobbying groups out there that pretend to fight for American ranchers, but do not. And they are just lobbying groups that you've mentioned that I'm very sick and tired of. But the American rancher, they are always fighting to stay operational. And when President Trump was elected for the second time, a lot of American ranchers were so happy and they felt like they really had someone again in the White House fighting for them. And they were hoping during the first administration that he would do something to push forward country of origin labeling. That didn't happen. And now here we are again. I think that President Trump cares about American ranchers and farmers. I know that he does, but I don't know where the disconnect is happening here. I don't know who's to blame for this. I don't know if President Trump just wants to do Argentina a favor because he likes their president. I'm just not sure how this came to be. When I saw it on social media, I was shocked. And I just can't fathom why this move is being made. Have you heard from anybody else on why this decision to import meat from Argentina has come to this place?
Well, I have heard from one of my other colleagues here in Congress about what we're going to do about it, and that's Harriet Hageman from Wyoming. She's of a like mind of you, Tommy. She has family who's in ranching, and it's not because she's self-interested or self-dealing. It's because she understands the problem and she knows the plight. She's just representing people in Wyoming, much like I'm representing people in Kentucky. I have 50 cattle. I have a whopping 50 cattle. So I don't know if I can call myself a rancher, but that's enough to lose enough money every year to know that somebody who has a lot of cattle has really been taking it in the shorts over the last few years. And so that's why I've been a proponent for ranchers here in Congress. So Harriet's working on country of origin labeling legislation. I am as well. And then I've got another bill called the Prime Act that I've been pushing since 2015. And really the impetus for the Prime Act, which, by the way, is supported by RCAF. I just met with that group in my office, one of the few organizations that actually represents farmers instead of being the foxes guarding the hen house. My Prime Act would allow people ranchers to sell beef within their own state, not for interstate commerce, for intrastate commerce, as long as they follow the health and safety laws of their state and counties. And that seems like an appropriate level of regulation, because that's the other thing. The USDA, I believe the president could bring back country of origin labeling. If he has the power to do taxes or tariffs on his own, he could probably do country of origin labeling. But Congress certainly has that power. But the other thing we could do is give a reprieve to these small custom processors. That's what my Prime Act would do, so that local farmers can sell to local consumers using a local processor, and then you cut out the middlemen, these giant, meat industrial complex. Now, not all farmers are going to sell directly to consumers, but if just maybe 5% could break out of this system, that would put downward pressure on this oligarchy of meat processors.
I'm so glad that you're bringing this to the forefront, because people who don't live in agriculture states or don't have family members in agriculture or livestock, a lot of this is really abstract to them. And I'm so thankful that you're bringing it to the forefront. Just to speak to this herd shortage, because I see the know-it-alls, the keyboard warriors on Twitter go, well, we have a herd shortage. That's why we need to import more foreign meat. Well, it might be so that we have a herd shortage, but how did we get here? By importing foreign meat. My uncle, like I said, my uncle's a rancher in South Dakota, and he's had to decrease his herd size, and he's actually had to rent out land to other folks to just make a living. And the reason they have to reduce their herd size is because they're not making enough money to stay operational, because the government has given them no indication that they could increase their herd size and be able to make a profit. So that's why we're here. And it's so frustrating that some think that the remedy for that is, well, let's just get more beef from other countries. Can you please help me explain it to folks that are not familiar with how we got here?
Yeah, it's a cyclical market in the cattle market. With chickens, when the egg hatches, 8 weeks later, you have poultry in the freezer, okay? With a hog, it's a few months. With a cow, it's 2 years, okay? So it's cyclical in nature. You can't turn this on a dime, but what is happening right now is the price that farmers are seeing for their calves is a fair price for the first time in a decade. That will incentivize these younger farmers who may be in their 20s who are thinking about, okay, do I really want to take over the ranch while I'm seeing, my father lose money for the last decade and have to subsidize it with other endeavors and maybe a day job? Well, now they're saying it might make sense to buy some heifers and get into the business. And if you take that away from them, if you take that signal from the market that calf prices are higher, that they will not get into the market. So this is the exact opposite of what you need to be doing at a time like this. The high price in calves is a signal to the farmer that you can expand now. After a decade of being in the desert, it's time to expand. But if we import that beef, or worse yet, import other cattle that the processors can process, then nobody's going to get into this market. You're going to exacerbate it. More farmers will drop out of it. And my own kids, like I've got 50 cattle. They got loose last night back in Kentucky. I'm in D.C. And so my son-in-law had to put them up. And he's probably thinking, he and my daughter, do we really want to do this? We haven't really seen our dad make money at this. It's like you said, Tommy, it's the wrong thing. And problem is you got people here in D.C. who are disconnected from the reality of what farming, particularly raising livestock, is really about.
And a lot of ranchers also don't want to get involved in politics. They work hard. They don't want anything to do with it. You've got RCAF that's fighting for our American cattlemen, but besides RCAF, a lot of ranchers, they just don't have the time, quite frankly, to get involved, and they just hope that there are people out there like yourself who will speak up for them. Another thing I noticed when I started talking about this is, again, the keyboard warriors saying, well, the ranchers, they have, all these multiple homes, and they have helicopters, and they all have fancy new shiny pickups. And my response to them was, I think you've been watching a little bit too much Yellowstone, because the average rancher out there does not live like that and have a private chef and have multiple vehicles. Like, there is this notion, because of shows like Yellowstone, that ranchers are out there just living high on the hog, so to speak. And that's simply not the case, at least not in South Dakota, where I'm from, Congressman.
Well, listen, I represent 20 counties in Kentucky, and the poorest county is the one that has the most cattle. It's the one that I live in. My county has 13,000 people and 13,000 cattle. And I can assure you, it's not like an episode of Dallas, if you remember Dallas, where we're all living rich and high on the hog. It usually The wife has a job to support the farm. Maybe she's a school teacher, so they can get some kind of health insurance. And usually the dad, the guy, has a job. Maybe he's working construction. He gets up at 3 a.m. and drives 2 hours to the construction site and comes back and then deals with the cattle. It's really a hard thing to do full time. And that's what we need more of, is more people who can make a living out of it. And like you said, it's a kick in the shorts to say we're going to import cheap beef and we're going to conflate that meat with American meat in the supermarket, because we're going to slap a USDA sticker on it, that people think is a USA sticker. I think a big thing we could do is to bring back country of origin labeling. I remember when Donald Trump, and by the way, the ceremony was right outside here behind me. His speech when he was sworn in his first term, he told the World Trade Organization they could shove it. And I was cheering, I was clapping. I was like, finally, we got a president who's not a globalist and knows that the Supreme Court is the Supreme Court of the United States and there is no higher court. And I thought we would get country of origin labeling back. We need to bring that back. And it's not anti-competitive. The other countries are saying it's anti-competitive. By the way, it was Canada and Mexico who sued us. I think it was the meat packers that put them up to it because they wanted to buy those cattle from Canada and Mexico and then, sell them as USA beef after they got processed here.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it is deceptive because when it says, even if it says product of USA, that could mean it was slaughtered here and packaged here, not born, bred, and raised here by American ranchers. The whole process is deceptive. And these meat packers, they love it because they can import this cheap stuff. They can undercut the American rancher. It all goes into the same system and nobody knows. The consumers do not know. And not everybody is fortunate enough to be able to have a local butcher or know a local rancher to be able to get their meat. I'll tell you, it's a superior product. Anybody who's had American beef knows that. But this whole process is so deceptive. And quite frankly, I was very unhappy with Sonny Perdue as the Secretary of Agriculture the first go around. The verdict is still out on Brooke Rollins, but I'm very disappointed by this. I think there's still time to correct course. Have you heard any rumblings that perhaps the administration could be rethinking this because of all the backlash?
Well, here's a suggestion I would have. If I were at USDA, I would implement this, and I think you could do it without Congress, and it's just a labeling program. Maybe not even mandatory, voluntary. If you want the seal of approval for USA beef, you have to comply with X, Y, and Z. Animal is born in the United States. Animal is processed in the United States. And you could get some kind of verification. That's something I think you could do even without a congressional law. But I haven't heard anything because the lobbyists are so powerful up here. And I hate to name them because here's the thing. Some of these organizations like National Cattlemen's Beef Association or Farm Bureau, they've got great local chapters. I go speak at them. They're at the county fairs. The farmers who belong to them are great. But then you get to the state organization and they're kind of neutral on the things that would help farmers. And once you get to the federal level, they support things like animal ID. They support the checkoff program. The problem is the checkoff program is the thing where you have to, it's the government forces farmers to give $1 to a private organization that can't be FOIA'd. And then the private organization is supposed to run those ads that say, beef, it's what's for dinner, or got milk. You don't see those ads anymore. What you see is people like Vilsack, that was Obama's ag secretary, getting a job there, drawing $1 million a year salary, and then going back through the revolving door and coming back to USDA to be Biden's ag secretary. They should be banned from becoming lobbyists and running these checkoff programs. I'm sorry, there's so much. I know I'm going down a rabbit hole here.
No, we appreciate it. People need to understand this.
Yeah, these lobbyists, if they're supporting farmers, they shouldn't be supporting the electronic ID. That's just another way to make the farmers become part of the industrial meat complex. And then they shouldn't be supporting the electronic ID or the checkoff program. And they should be supporting farmers with country of origin labeling. Why are these farm organizations in Washington, D.C., and I'm going to, an exception is RCAF. They've been great. But these other ones, they don't lobby for for country of origin labeling. In fact, behind the scenes, they're kind of against it. They say, oh, you'll touch off a trade war, and then they'll tariff our soybeans. Well, guess what? I thought we were going to put America first.
Yeah. That's why this feels so inconsistent to me. And I cannot understand the logic behind it, because this goes against everything. And President Trump put out on Truth Social, you know, the ranchers, they're getting the best prices because of my tariffs on Brazil and all that. And like, I know, great. I actually talked to a lot of ranchers when this whole tariff process was coming to fruition, and they said, thank you, President Trump, for the tariffs, because it'll give us a fighting chance. They were very grateful for that. But this is just a complete 180 from that whole line of thinking. And I just don't understand. We expect the American people to pay a little bit more because of the tariffs on China. You're going to have to pay a little bit more. Small businesses, a lot of small businesses are willing to pay a little more. They're willing to go through a tough time to watch this tariff experiment play out, putting their trust in the president. But then when you do this to the ranchers, it's just so inconsistent with the America First narrative. I just cannot figure out what the logic is. I hope they will reconsider. But as you said, Congressman, the very least we can do is just have mandatory. I love the voluntary, but it needs to be mandatory country of origin labeling, MCOOL, because our ranchers need to be able to differentiate their product. If somebody wants to go out and they want to buy Argentine beef, go for it. If that's the whole thing here, all right. But if you want to support American ranchers, you should be able to do that, not only at your local butcher, but at the grocery store. And that's what I think is the most important thing here. There has to be some kind of trade-off. And I'm just hoping that we can reach the administration on this. If this does happen and they are going to import all of this, and from what I've heard, it's a sizable amount of metric tons of beef from Argentina. What is the plan, if any, to help our American rancher beyond country of origin labeling?
Well, besides country of origin labeling, we need to, as I said, make it easier to get the beef processed if you want to go directly from the farmer to the consumer. Right now, as you alluded to, there are some people who know how to buy into this system, but they're buying like half a cow or a quarter of a cow because that's the only exemption that exists. And I think we should expand that exemption and allow farmers to use local processors and sell meat by the cut. So you don't have to buy $1,000 of meat and own a big chest deep freezer and pray that the electricity doesn't go off in the next year before your family consumes it all. You should be able to sell that meat by the cut without having a processing facility with the same regulations that the Oscar Mayer Wiener factory has, that, you know, where you have to build separate offices and bathrooms for USDA inspectors and have a 6-inch floor drain. Like, those are the regulations. And, you know, Tommy, the cattlemen, they are not in Washington, D.C. asking for subsidies. Right. Like, if you're trying to look for one bright spot in farming where the government hasn't been subsidizing the effort, it is in livestock production. Yeah. Corn is subsidized, soybeans are subsidized. Sometimes we call it euphemistically crop insurance, but that's underwritten by the government and subsidized. Cattlemen, these are the folks that are out there busting their tail, and they're not asking for handouts. So the answers are not handouts. We don't need to subsidize them. We just need to let them differentiate their product. And we also need to let them use local processors to sell directly to consumers.
What about exporting American beef? Listen, if we're expected to take on all this foreign meat from Brazil and all these other countries, Argentina, Canada, Australia, all product that I believe is also subpar, and that's not just me saying that as somebody from a ranching family, but if you look at their conditions, when you have that warm weather and you have, you know, the conditions that they have in some of these other countries, you're not getting the cattle that we have here. But why are we not exporting beef? Why are we not encouraging ranchers to increase their herd size, be able to really make a living at this, and export our product? That's another thing that they would love to be able to do.
Well, and we do export some beef and we do import some beef right now. But the problem is the other countries have discriminatory things. You know, the president could be fighting to get rid of that. And then you had this situation a few years ago where countries said, well, we want you to test your animals for mad cow. And we had farmers who were willing to do that. But then the federal government told the farmers that you can't test your animals for mad cow, even if you want to. And then you had lobbyists up here who were supporting that notion because they were afraid it would be bad for the meat packers if there was a false positive or something. I mean, really, we need to get the government out of the way. And I think our farmers could export even more beef if the government let us do what the other countries want in order to import that beef.
Yeah, certainly. I know that they would love the opportunity. And this whole thing that American ranchers, we couldn't support the demand, that might be true to an extent, but we got ourselves in this situation. Most people would like to support American ranchers, and they shouldn't be robbed of the opportunity to do so. Thank you for fighting for this. You're one of the only folks that I know. I know Senator Rounds from my state of South Dakota. I know that he's fighting alongside you and many of these things, but I wish we had more. And my last question for you would be, too, if you were to look at some of your colleagues that are from livestock or agriculture states that have yet to speak out, why are they hesitant to do so?
Well, Tommy, they're afraid. They're afraid to say anything against the president. Look, my beef isn't with the president. My beef is with this policy. And I think the president needs to hear from us. He needs to hear from Congress. We shouldn't all just be rubber stamps. We should say when he does something and we think it's not good policy for the people in our district, we should be willing to speak up. My hat's off to Harriet Hageman for working on the MCOOL, putting that back into place, and your senator. There are a few senators over there. And we need to use our voices. We need to advocate for our constituents and for the American people, not just the farmers, but the consumers. And frankly, the free market works. The solution to high cattle prices is high cattle prices. People will get into farming when they see that. Don't mess up the feedback loop by injecting cheap beef into the system.
Exactly.
And yeah, that's just a few of the things that we could do. A couple real quick things. We could quit subsidizing solar panels to go into these pastures. Like, we shouldn't have energy competing with farmers. That's one thing that we could do that would help. And we also need to have some truth in labeling on this fake meat stuff, because that's also not the answer. You don't want all your food made in a factory. You want it made on a farm.
Yeah, the consumer rejected that Beyond Meat stuff quite a while ago. What I also think is so interesting and great is that the demand for beef is so high right now. Americans want beef, but they want quality beef. They want quality meat. So the demand's not going anywhere. They tried to get us on that lab meat and the fake meat and the Beyond Meat and all that stuff. They tried that experiment and failed. The American people want beef. Let's give the American people American beef. Let them know what they're buying. I'm really thankful to you.
It is nutritional. It's nutrient dense. Our ancestors knew this. It's not bad for the environment. There were 40 to 60 million buffalo in the United States before we got here and eradicated them. That's roughly the size of the animal herd we have now, so there's nothing unnatural about it. And if you do it right, it's regenerative to the soil. So this, green people should be behind this, and consumers are waking up. They're understanding these true facts, and they're feeling it in their health too.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing. We're going to continue to stay on this. We've invited, not on this show, but on Big Weekend Show on Fox News, we invited Secretary Brooke Rollins on. She declined. Hopefully we can get her on. I would love to ask her some questions. She might have been busy. I don't know the reason, but I would certainly love to speak to her about this. It's something that I'm really passionate about. I know obviously you are, and several others as well. So we hope we can change their minds, but if not, we just need to push for mandatory country of origin labeling. Let's level the playing field. Thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Congressman. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Tommy.
Thank you. There's one athletic brand that stands up for free speech and women's sports. That brand is XXXY Athletics. The clothes are high quality. When you wear them, you'll also make a statement that you stand with women and girls and for fairness in sports. You no longer have to sacrifice fit, quality, and performance to wear your values. XXXY Athletics makes world-class workout gear. Their legit leggings are moisture-wicking, quick-drying, and the fit is perfect. They hold you in without holding you back. And for men, the Courageous Core Short is everything you need in a workout short. High-performance fabric, secure pockets, quick-drying, and so soft you'll barely know they're there. They also do great casual stuff. The logo tee says you're on Team Common Sense. Don't give money to athletic brands that don't stand up for women, fair competition, and free speech. Head to thetruthfits.com, enter promo code OUTKICK20 to get 20% off, only at thetruthfits.com. All right, folks, that does it for this special episode of Tomi Lahren is Fearless. Catch full episodes on Outkick and Fox Nation. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. For more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click right here. And don't forget to subscribe. Just click right here so you never miss a beat. I will be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.